Respected members in the panel on board and special guest V. Sharma Garu, today's speaker, and Dr. Nilima and other colleagues and dear student friends. A very good morning to you all. Now, today we have Human Values Section 2, for which I request Dr. Nilima Agarwal to coordinate the session, and before that, give a brief introduction of the today's speaker. Before that, I would like to clarify two questions asked by the students before we proceed for the session. We have a gym, excellent gym facility in the campus. This is one question asked by one of the students. And also, how do we get our admission numbers? This, again, the AEC people, they'll allot the numbers, and in which section you are also will be clarified by the AEC people in a couple of days. And just also, we have hostels. This is also you'll be coming to know it shortly, because the pandemic situation is on, and let us not bother about the hostels right now. Then these are the questions, and now over to Dr. Nilima Agarwal to introduce the speaker and continue the session. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. A very warm welcome to all the students for the day 2 of student induction program. Yesterday, I hope you all have enjoyed yesterday's wonderful sessions on Human Values 1 and the virtual tour of the campus. So, it's my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Professor G.V.V. Sharma. He received his PhD in Electrical Engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, MSc Engineering from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, ISC Bangalore, and BTech from IIT Guwahati. Before joining IIT Hyderabad as a faculty, he was employed in the software industry. He works on wireless technologies, but has a passion for development engineering and taking technology to the masses. And he takes deep interest in such kind of sessions on human values and ethics. And let us all welcome Professor Sharma. So
thank you, madam, for a nice introduction. So I usually have an interactive session with students. This is what I did last year, but this time, due to some technological issues, it is not possible to have that right away. So initially I was asked to maybe present some slides, etc. But some 3 or 4 years back, there was one discussion on education related conference, and there was one education related conference which was held in Delhi. And that was basically a review meeting which was conducted for all the teaching learning centers which had been established by the MHRD, now Ministry of Education. And one of the speakers there said that, he gave a PowerPoint presentation. And then he said that PowerPoint is usually an overhead. And in principle, it should be avoided, because he gave the presentation and then some issues were there with the presentation. And then I realized that I had never given a PowerPoint presentation in my entire life. So though I was not trained formally in any teaching school or something, I always, I never liked the idea of PowerPoint presentations at all. Of course, I did give presentations internally when we had some meetings or something like that. But for teaching purposes and even these kind of lectures, I don't think I have given any PowerPoint presentation. Maybe for some research talks, and I have given a couple of times, that too very early in my career. So that is why I didn't put any presentation. Okay. And then I got to, I started thinking, so what is it that I should base my interaction on? Because this is the first time in a long time that I'm trying to give something like a speech, something extempore. So, and because the title is Human Values and Ethics, so what is a document that is best suited to provide a framework for human values and ethics? Because it's a very broad subject. So let me go through the syllabus first that was shared by Dr. Nilima. So I'll share my screen and we'll first have a look at the syllabus. So my whole talk or whatever I'm speaking about is informal. So don't take me very seriously, but do take the spirit of whatever I am trying to convey seriously. Okay. So I'm sharing my presentation now, or sharing my whatever documents now. So first I'll start with the CBIT ethics session syllabus. So this is what was shared by Dr. Nilima. So I don't know if it is very well visible, but I'll just read out the topics. So introduction to HPP, I'm sure like our module is, I think, number 7 and to some extent maybe 1 also, human values. So need for value education, lack of education in values, benefits of value education, definition of values, concept of values and of human values, hierarchy of values, classification of human values, challenges for value adoption. I'll just briefly read. Accountability and responsibility, attributes of good character, good relations, spirituality, purity of thought, okay, positive thinking, importance of women, children, ethics, morals, and human life, types of ethics, personal ethics, science, religion, ethics, sustainable development, role and responsibility of engineers, plagiarism, self-plagiarism. So this is related to engineering and technology, engineering profession. So these are all sorts of like subtopics which broadly can be put under human values and ethics. Okay. So now the framework that I have chosen for my discussion with you all today is the Constitution of India, because I felt that this is something which is very clear. It is something that we are kind of follow, at least legally. And the values that we are going to kind of broadly follow in the country are based on the Constitution. Okay. So if you look at the Constitution, there are several parts to it. The Union and its territory, citizenship, fundamental rights, okay, and directive principles and fundamental duties. Then comes the executive part. Okay, so the Constitution can be safely divided into some various parts. As you can see, if you look at the democracy of India, in fact, any democracy, there are 3 pillars. One is the legislature, which makes laws. Then you have the executive, which implements these laws. Okay, and basically broadly they are involved in governance. So the Prime Minister, the Council of Ministers, Cabinet Ministers, State Government, Chief Ministers, they all fall under executive. Okay, legislature is basically your parliament at the center, and state legislatures. You have all sorts of legislatures in all states. Okay, including union territories. Some of them also have legislatures. And then the judiciary. Okay. Now the parliament and the legislatures are supposed to make laws. The executive is supposed to implement many of these laws. Okay. In general, provide governance and ensure that all the laws are safeguarded. So police, for example, is a part of the executive. And then you have the judiciary. So the role of the judiciary is to interpret these laws and ensure that, I mean, basically give some sort of advice to the state to ensure that these laws are followed. Okay. So the interpretation is something which is very, very open. So there is no rule, right? How do you know what a word means? So there are different issues there. Okay. So if I think of, if I try to relate this to ethics, then the Constitution of India, okay, provides a set of human values. For example, fundamental rights, fundamental duties, directive principles. They are all based on human values. Okay, and then comes the legislature, sorry, the executive, which ensures that these human values are respected by all the people, and in general, the society follows these values. Okay, and the judiciary, which interprets various laws to uphold these human values. Okay, so that is the framework which I have kind of constituted. It's not a perfect framework. There is nothing as such perfect that I have seen in life. So, but then there is a nice framework for us to follow. Okay, so let's start with the Constitution. Okay, the preamble. So that will just scrolling down, and then we'll read from there. It's a pretty lengthy document. Okay. Yeah, so let's read the preamble here. In fact, day before yesterday was, I think, Constitution Day, November 26th. So we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. Okay. There are some footnotes here. So, substitution by the Constitution 42nd Amendment Act 1976. So, it so happened that emergency was declared in 1975 and a couple of amendments were made. Okay. So, earlier it was the preamble used to have only sovereign democratic republic. Fine. And the two things that were added were socialist and secular. Now, remember, this was something that was added during the emergency, which itself was not a democratic kind of government. At that time, these two were added. Okay, it's a very kind of tricky situation where you have socialist and secular, two things which were not in the original constitution, which were added during a time when the constitution was effectively suspended. Okay, so now we have citizenship and then fundamental rights. So let's look at these fundamental rights. This is in fact the essence of the Indian Constitution. Okay, the value system that is followed in India today is based on these fundamental rights. I think in 1973, the Supreme Court effectively said that the fundamental rights cannot be amended. Okay, and this is the basic spirit or basic feature of the Constitution is the fundamental rights. Broadly, they mentioned that. They didn't specify anything in detail, but just broadly said that the basic character of the Constitution cannot be changed. And by basic character, other judgments have said that the fundamental rights form the basic character. So what are these fundamental rights? So right to equality. Okay. So equality before law. The state shall not deny to any person equality before the law or the equal protection of the laws within the territory of India. So the idea is that every citizen of the country is equal. Okay. So there is a moral value. Right? All of us, all human beings are born equal. Okay. Now Thomas Jefferson, who was one of the architects of the American Constitution, so he was, and if you look at the American Constitution, it has many of these values which we also have. But then America became independent in 1775 or 76, I think. And in those days, coming up with a constitution which has had very few amendments in the last 300 years is a very big achievement. Okay, so that way, I have a lot of respect for the people who framed the American Constitution because we have borrowed many of the ideas from there, and they have one of the best, human values, I would say, enshrined in the Constitution, much before the British or anybody had. So prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. So this is again something which is based on equality. So there should be no discrimination between people based on religion. And race, I don't understand. What does race mean? Because race is something which in the American context makes sense. Color basically is what used to define race there. In the Indian context, race has no meaning. But then in those days, based on skin color, they categorize as race. All Indians, as far as I know, belong to the same race. Okay, our DNA is more or less the same, whether you are born in the north or south, or even most parts of northeast. Okay, so this anyway, they introduce this race. Then caste. So that is basically the Varna system that we had among the Hindus. Then sex, basically male and female. Now we have other categories also, or place of birth. So basically where we are born, which region we are born, we should not be discriminated based on region. So regionalism should not have a place in the Constitution. Okay, so these are kind of the moral values which clarify this equality before law. Okay. Now, if we look at other things, most of these are like based on providing these kind of rights to all citizens. Okay. Now, interesting thing are this. I think I'll come to those things later. Right to equality is something that is one of the values that all of us should kind of follow. Okay. Now, because it's so lengthy, so you see there are several amendments which are being made to the right to equality. So that is where the ethics part kind of comes in. Okay. So you have values which is right to equality, and then how these values are actually interpreted or how these have been modified, that constitutes the component which is related to ethics. So I'll come to that later. The equality of opportunity in matters of public employment. So basically, when you are employed by the government, then some equality has to be there. So this again is part of this right to equality only. Okay, where equality of opportunity is kind of classified, and mostly in government sector. Okay. Now 17, abolition of untouchability. So again, this is also part of right to equality, because in the old days, and because of whatever people used to do, the kind of work they did, that differentiated the Hindu whatever Varna system into various jatis. And based on jatis, based on the work they did, many things were not considered nice. People who were kind of cleaning sewers, or people who were kind of doing other jobs, leather industry and stuff like that. So they were kind of considered as untouchable by some section of the community in some areas. So, and some issues were there as a consequence of sort of colonial rule and other things also. So that is why a law was enacted saying abolition of untouchability. So untouchability again comes under right to equality. Next, abolition of titles. In the British Raj, many titles were conferred, and that gave a sense of false prestige to some other people. Okay, and this was another colonial kind of item. So after independence, they said, okay, no more abolition, no more titles will be awarded. Okay, so then they extended it to the Indian state also. Now this again is a kind of interesting issue where the ethics part comes. Okay, so I'll discuss this again later. Now, right to freedom. So here it's basically, what does freedom mean? So freedom means the ability to speak freely, the ability to maybe conduct your trade freely, right to kind of mix with other people of your association, maybe your group or whatever. Okay, and you can also protest, assemble peaceably. Okay, you can move freely anywhere in the country. So all these things are there. And again, there are some issues with this right to freedom. Okay, so right to freedom of speech is there. Other rights are also there. So I'll come back to this later when it comes to ethics part. Okay. So protection of life and personal liberty. Basically, this is right to life. So everyone has a right to life. Nobody can just murder you or kill you just like that, and the government cannot do that. The duty of the government is to protect your life. Okay. Then, as part of this right to life, this right to education was kind of introduced. Now, this again is something very kind of I find it funny. Okay, because it is coming under right to life. So if you extend the definition of right to life to right to education, then right to health, right to livelihood, right to everything, in that case, basically you do nothing and then the state has to provide everything to you. Okay, so that interpretation is kind of very kind of nuanced, and I'll come back to this later when it comes to ethics. Protection against arrest and detention. So this is again part of right to life. You cannot simply be jailed under some this thing. Again, a lot of caveats are there. Okay, we'll discuss that later. Then prohibition of trafficking human beings. So this is right against exploitation. Basically, bonded labor used to exist in British Raj. So what would happen is many zamindar, they would just hire people and they would just pay minimum, they would just give them food or something like that and give them nothing. So no education, nothing of that sort. Effectively, they are servants of zamindar, or they were bonded labor of even the Britishers. So a lot of like British capitalists, they would do their own business in various areas, and they would also not pay properly to the people who are working for them. Okay? So this comes under, say, prohibition of traffic in human beings. Basically, bonded labor is something which was discouraged by this right against exploitation. Okay? And again, children's rights. So young kids being employed in factories and all. So that again is something which was kind of discouraged by this right against exploitation. Okay? Right to freedom of religion. So articles 25 to 30, they discuss the right to freedom of religion. Basically, you are free to practice your religion. You are free to pray to your gods. You are free to kind of propagate, so hold meetings and all, hold bhajans or hold whatever mass and all those kind of things. So that is another right which is given by the state. Okay. And some exemptions are there. So some religions, they have special listing and all that. Okay. So freedom to manage religious affairs. So you can establish your temples and do all sorts of things for your churches. Freedom as to payment of taxes for promotion of any particular religion. So basically, if you are like having your own institution, then you don't need to pay taxes from the money that is collected for religious activity. Okay, so that is the basic idea. Again, there are issues here. And then freedom as to attendance at religious instruction, religious worship. So basically, if you want to start a religious education institution, you can do that. Okay. So now here there are two kinds of institutions which can be started based on this. One is purely religious, and again one is this linguistic minority. You have religious minority and linguistic minority. So both of them can start their own institutions and administer. So this again is one more right. So here again there are some issues about ethics and stuff like that. Okay. So yeah, these are the basic fundamental rights that are given in the Constitution. And let's go to the beginning. Yeah. Laws inconsistent with or in derogation of the fundamental rights. Now here again the issue of ethics, etc. comes. How do you define what are the laws which are not conforming to this fundamental right? So this is again something which is usually decided by courts. Okay. So if you find any law which is in violation of fundamental rights, okay, then those laws will be void. Okay. And typically these inconsistencies in the laws are examined by the Supreme Court of India, and they deliver verdicts based on this. Okay. So this is something very important. So you have laws or whatever moral values which are kind of propagated by the state through laws, and the protection of these based on the language of the or the spirit of these moral values propagated in the form of fundamental rights is decided by the judiciary. Okay. So with this, the fundamental rights are kind of done. Okay. Now let's look at next one. Yeah. Next, we have directive principles of state policy. Now, here what happens at the time of independence, there are some things that were decided that they should be enacted, or they should be there for the benefit of the people. Okay, but they didn't enact laws for that. Okay, so certain principles of policy to be followed by state. Men and women equally have a right to an adequate means of livelihood. Basically, you have to ensure that people are able to earn money. Okay. Then ownership and control of material resources of the community are so distributed as best to fulfill the common good. Idea is that some kind of this thing, distribution of resources. So everyone should have money to eat. All the public distribution system, etc., that you see now, okay, free power or free water, they come under this category loosely, I would say. Okay. Equal pay for equal work for both men and women. Again, this is something which is there, I'm sure there are laws also, but enforcement is an issue. So it's not easy to enforce these things. But these are principles that the state has kind of is supposed to follow. Okay. Health and strength of workers, men and women, and the tender age of children are not abused, and citizens are not forced by economic necessity. Okay. So this again is another directive principle. Fine. Then equal justice and free legal aid. So this should be available to the people. Great panchayat. Now again, panchayati raj laws, etc. are there, but they are enacted by many of the states, and some issues are there with that. But again, this is a directive principle. Okay. Promotion of cooperative societies, uniform civil codes for citizens. So personal laws are something which the state shall endeavor to secure. Okay. Like marriage rights for women and all such things. That comes in the uniform civil code. Okay. Organization of agriculture and animal husbandry. So a lot of things have been prescribed. Okay. Yeah. So these are the directive principles, which are basically advisories given to the government that you should take care of these things for the city. Okay. Yeah. For example, prohibiting the slaughter of cows and other milk and draught cattle. So this also is there as part of this directive principle. Protection of monuments and places and objects of national importance. So many of our old monuments and all, they should also be protected. Okay. So these are all the directives. Then come fundamental duties. Okay. Now these are kind of moral values which are clearly enshrined, and again these came in 1976 during the emergency when the constitution was effectively suspended. Okay. So again, very interesting that apart from socialism and secularism, fundamental duties also were inserted into the constitution during the emergency. Okay. So these are like something that we can look at. To abide by the constitution and respect its ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. Okay. To cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. To uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. To defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. To promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic and regional or sectional diversity. To renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. To value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture, to protect and improve the natural environment including forests, lakes, rivers and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures, to help the scientific temper, humanism and the spirit of inquiry and reform, to safeguard public property and to abjure violence, to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. Okay. And then one more was inserted, which actually I don't find, so far it looks okay, but here point K, who is a parent or guardian to provide opportunities for children for education to his child, or as the case may be, ward between the age of 6 and 14 years. Now this is already there in under Article 21A, that is right to education. And again, it has been introduced as fundamental duty. So, I don't understand why you are inserting the same thing at two places. Okay, some legal issue I don't know, but so these are effectively the values which are enshrined in our constitution. Okay, and to summarize, after reading all these things, what is it? Basically equality, okay, and freedom. So two things can summarize everything. Fine. So of course, right to life is by default a fundamental right. Everyone has the right to live. Everyone has the right to practice their livelihood. Okay. Everyone has the right to be equal in the eyes of the government. The government should not treat people unequally. Okay. And everyone should be free. You should be free to express your views or whatever is there. Fine. So this is basically what is required. Now, when it comes to say your college, okay, same thing should apply. If you are studying, you should treat your fellow beings, fellow classmates as your peers, as your equals, not discriminate on the basis of anything. Okay, so that applies here. You should allow your friends the freedom to speak their views, listen to their views. You should be a good listener. So that's also very important. Okay. So equality and freedom are effectively what are fundamental even in education. Okay. So that is very, very essential. Right? So now comes the issue of ethics. Okay. So let's go to a few things. Now, whatever I am saying here is based on my interpretation and what I have observed over many years. Okay. So let's come to this Article 30 of the Constitution. The reason why I'm using this as an example is because in your personal interactions or whenever you are in positions where you can influence something, you have to ensure that whatever you are doing has to be fair. Okay. So if right to equality is there, if you are supposed to treat people equally, then it has to be in spirit. Okay, not just in letter. So now if you look at cultural and educational rights, protection of interests of minorities, any section of the citizens residing in the territory of India or any part thereof having a distinct language, script or culture of its own shall have the right to conserve the same. Okay. So basically if you are suppose if you are a Kannada person in say Telangana, you will have the right to preserve your language and make attempts. So basically you start your own schools or colleges and you can kind of propagate your culture and preserve it. Okay. Now remember that these linguistic issues, they were all existing at the time of independence, because in those days the states were not reorganized based on language. All that came after Sri Potti Sriniramlu died during a fast, and then the first state to come into existence was the state of United Andhra Pradesh. Of course, it's an irony that now AP broke into two states, AP and Telangana. But it was the first state to kind of come into existence in the country. Okay, so what happened? This happened in 1956, and our constitution came into force in 1950. Right. Before that, also they were following something. But 1950, at that time when we became a republic, then what happened was this constitution had safeguards for linguistic minorities, because we had the presidency, Madras presidency, United Province, Bombay presidency, and all these had a mix of people who spoke different languages. So it was essential that not one language dominate. Okay, and somehow whatever happened in the initial year, many people felt that some language would dominate, and that's why they reorganized into states based on geographical regions. But this law still continued. Okay, and so minorities, linguistic minorities, still have the right to start their colleges and preserve their culture. So this was more like an enabling feature. Now, same right was established to minorities. Now, minority, religious minority, the definition is still not very, very clear, because when it comes to personal laws, Jains, Sikhs, and Buddhists, they are all come under Hindus. And when it comes to this Article 30, right to administer, then they are considered distinct from Hindus. So it's very, very kind of dicey. So some issue comes here. I'll come to the ethical issue later. And the objective here was that after partition, India decided to be a state where people from all religions will have equal rights. So specification of right of minorities was more like an enabling feature, in the sense that they wanted to clearly tell the people belonging to the minority religion that you are free to start your institutions, the state will not interfere. Okay. So now what is the ethical dilemma here? What happened was, due to some reason, many states started taking over temples. Okay, this was Hindu temples. And many education institutions which were started by Hindus again were regulated by the state. Okay, so this happened because explicitly it was not mentioned in Article 30 that Hindus are free to manage their institutions, whereas the idea was that it would be kind of implicit that anybody who starts his own company or his own college, his own temple or his own religious institution should be free to administer it. But that freedom was kind of denied based on, I don't know what. Still some research has to be done. Most likely it would be some political reason. Okay, but it happened. And even the courts interpreted it that way. Okay, so here is an ethical kind of issue Morally, it makes sense that everyone should have the freedom to start their own institutions. Minorities means obviously they should have the right, but even others should have the right. In fact, every individual who wants to start an institution should have the right to start their own institution, establish it. Okay, but they don't because of some interpretation by the Supreme Court also. Okay, and still there are a lot of cases that are going on. Okay, so here is where there is a clash between the moral issues and the ethical issues. Because in my opinion, it is unethical. If someone is starting a college, why should he not have the right to run the college himself or herself, unless they are doing something wrong? Okay. So again, here there are judgments where even these rights which are conferred to minorities are subject to kind of some laws by the government, where they cannot maladminister. In the sense that you cannot do corruption and then say that we are kind of free to do whatever we want just because we belong to some category. Okay. So this is one issue where the conflict between morality and ethics comes into picture. Okay. The second issue is when it comes to the right to education. Let's go to right to education. I'm like talking about this in context of education because I have seen many things. So I thought I will focus more on the educational aspect. And then I'll tell you the reason why these ethics issues which restrict freedoms of certain whatever religious communities, why they are not good for the country. Okay. So right to education. So here the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children of the age of 6 to 14 years in such manner as the state by law determines. So as part of this, what happened was some subclause of this article 16 happened, 15. Okay. Where it says nothing in this article, you see this clause 4, nothing in this article on the clause 2 of article 29 shall prevent the state from making any special provision for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Okay, so what happened was this policy of reservation was brought in by the state. Okay, again there is nothing wrong here because many people were not economically in a good condition and even socially they were backward. Then untouchability was mostly applied to scheduled caste. Scheduled tribes are a different category. So this issue kind of came up. And at that time, the government said, this was way back in 1947, they said that we will have some reservation for people belonging to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Okay. And this was extended later. So the original spirit was that the state would kind of provide this. So basically, in government colleges, there would be reservation for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Then it was extended to OBC way back in 1990. Okay. And then in 1990 it was extended for jobs. Yeah, from what I remember, that's what the Mandal Commission did. And then in 1996, and some institutions were covered. In 2006, it was extended to all institutions, even IITs and other institutions came under this. Okay. Now, what happened as a consequence that as far as it is, if it is limited to government organizations, still made sense because the state was kind of funding and they had every right to make whatever reservations they wanted based on these. But they extended this to Hindu private institutions. Okay, and that was a big issue because there were laws related to this education where Hindu institutions were exempt, basically professional colleges were exempt, and I think in 1992 or 2012, I forget which state, there was a very famous case, TMA Pi, okay, and many private colleges, I'm pretty sure even CBIT and all, must have faced such issues because then what happened, you were supposed to provide reservations just because the college is promoted by someone with a Hindu name or who practices Hindu religion or a society which is essentially Hindu in nature. So they were discriminated against and only those were subject to reservation. Okay. So this became a big issue and still there are a lot of problems related to this. Okay. So now two things arise. Let's come to the ethical part here. See, in principle, education should be available to all. Fine. So it makes sense. But the question is, why is it that only some people should be kind of giving this facility? Why should it not be for all? If you are going to ensure that all private institutions are kind of liable to give education to some percentage of the population for effectively free or subsidized rates, then all institutions should do that. If it's a noble thing, why should only one community be targeted? That is one issue. Now the other consequence, okay, no, this has nothing to do with morality or ethics, but from the country's perspective, what has happened is this has prevented many other philanthropists, okay. Mr. Narayan Murthy of Infosys Technologies, he is on record having stated many times that they wanted to start a university, okay, but they could not because of these sectarian laws, okay, because they were afraid that there would be interference by some regulatory authority and there would be interference to provide reservations and all, okay. So these issues are there. So right now there are still many private colleges which don't have reservations, okay, some of them are there, some others are coming up, but they also may be asked by the state to follow this dictate. So it is possible. Either the state government or central government may enact appropriate laws because constitutionally there is no protection provided. Okay, and now we have other issues also. Like now the Supreme Court said that only 50% reservation can be there, but it has been extended. Okay. So in the context of education, the biggest problem has been killing capacity. Okay. So this is something which needs to be addressed because unless we have good education institutions, we will not do well. Fine. So I'll give a context to this. We started with the constitution, then we looked at the moral values which are there in the constitution. Then again I am looking at the values which are enshrined in the constitution with respect to equality and education, how they became sectarian based on some interpretation. And as a consequence, what has happened is there are very few good quality institutions. The IITs of the level of IITs, let me put it that way. Okay, if you look at the NIRF ranking, mostly you will see government institutions there, and mostly among those government institutions you will see IIT in the top whatever 50 or 100. Most of them will be government institutions. So as a consequence, what happened? We have not been able to kind of establish good private education institutions. Fine. Because money is something which is going to be important. I have been part of this establishing labs, etc. at IIT, and I know how much money it takes. Right now, we charge maybe some I think 3 lakhs per annum for the students. Okay, so 3 lakhs per semester. I don't remember which. So yeah, I think it's 3 lakhs per year. But the actual cost, if you look at it, is around 8 lakhs per year. That is the actual cost. And the cost which is kind of not accounted for is lab. Every year something new comes up, you have to change the lab. Okay, and that involves a cost. So if you are saying that you have to provide education for free without any grant coming from the government to establish labs, to establish research facilities, to ensure quality, then where are they going to make money from? So then you have the issue of kind of hiked fees, these quotas, management quotas or other things among the private institutions. And that is creating a huge problem. And recently I came to know that even minority institutions are facing problems. It's not just limited to, because the ethical issue here is when the states start controlling everything and at the individual level, then it does not fare. So if you are like probably belonging to some minority, they will try to figure out some law where they can try to control you also. So a very famous case is this CMC Vellore. When NEET was established, CMC Vellore had a very different kind of admission process. Okay, and in that process, they are having a, I mean, they are mostly a religious funded organization, CMC Vellore, medical institution, and they have excellent facilities and excellent doctors, and they have excellent system of admission also. Okay, they ensure that the people who come into that college are from tribal areas. They have special provisions, and they have a very nice philosophy of getting people. Okay, and their admission system was superseded by the NEET, which was enacted by the central government at the recommendation of the Supreme Court again. So it became a very big mess. And finally, for I think 1 year, they didn't even admit people because they did not want to follow that law. CMC Vellore didn't have admissions for 1 year. Then they realized that it's better not to fight the government and whatever figure out some way to admit good people. So they then use, I mean, I think now they admit using NEET. Okay. So these issues do happen, and these are ethical issues. Okay. Now comes to this influencers. So I'll now come to shift the topic a bit. We all know what the issues are. You want basically equality, okay? And when I say equality, science is one way in which you can actually accomplish equality, okay? Because engineering education is has lifted a lot of people from poverty. I have witnessed this myself uh, because many of my friends, of course, I came from a decent family, but I have seen many poor people who have had either engineering or MC or some kind of computer education, which actually lifted them from poverty. They got jobs in multinational companies and they are making good salaries. So a lot of things are there. A lot of benefits have been there because of technical education. Okay. So that is something which has actually helped many of us, and that is the way forward. Before 1991, government used to have a lot of control over many things. Industries were controlled by the government. Education was controlled by the government. Even now, education is controlled partially. Even industries are controlled partially, but things are still much better because now you have a lot of private colleges coming up. Okay, so things are definitely much better now compared to how they were, say, before 1991, when we had a more socialist kind of system. Okay, so for all this, you have seen the influence of socialism, secularism, okay, and all these fundamental rights. There is a very kind of difficult mix, I would say. So the morality says one thing, and the actual implementation is something different. Okay? So I thought the Constitution provides one good framework for us to examine these issues of morality and ethics. Now let me come to some more things beyond the Constitution. Okay? So now, where do you learn these moral values from? Let's look at this. So, what are the biggest influencers in young children's life nowadays? Based on my assessment, see, when we are born, we are taken care of by our families, our relatives, and our teachers. I forgot to add one big thing here. Okay. The major influences in our life are basically these. We have movies. Cinema is one influencer. Cricket, a lot of people like cricket or other sports. Then politics, politicians have an influence on us. News media, we read newspapers, social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Then teachers and family. Okay. If you look at our Shastras, okay, because I have more access to that, the Hindu Dharma Shastras and our religious texts, the lot of emphasis has been given to teachers and family. So first there is Matru Bhava, then there is Pitru Bhava, and then we have Acharya Bhava. So family and teachers were the biggest influences in our life. Okay, at least because I'm a practicing Hindu, so I can say something based on my experience. And I'm pretty sure even other religions also similar things are there. They also have a lot of respect for family and teachers. Okay. Now, what happens? Initially, this is the influence that we have, and usually these are good influences. More or less, the value system which we have in school is because of our family, which teaches something good, and because of teachers, which usually teach good. Okay. These are teachers that I know, that whom I have interacted with. Our personal lives may be different, but when it comes to students, we have a different scope. We do believe that the students should learn only good things. Okay? And even parents, they want only good for their children. Now, what happens when you come to college? Or in fact, it starts a little bit when you are starting to go to school itself. In these days, in my days, when I was young, we didn't have even a television at home for a few years. So a TV came in 1985 to our house, and that too it was a very early thing. So even in those days, TV was not easy. But then these days, you have access to TV, iPads, and all these things. So your influencers are movies, okay, And nowadays we find these film stars giving lectures on all sorts of things. Okay, from ant to atom bomb, they know everything, and they tell us how to live, how to do what. So recently we had the Mumbai Metro being kind of delayed because some film stars are doing activism, and they are saying that because some trees are being cut in RA colony in Mumbai, so it is not healthy, and they should not be cut. The metro yard should be somewhere else. All sorts of things, and they themselves are driving big SUVs. And for one person, a big car is there with a diesel car that too, which will emit a lot of bad gases and all, and they will give lectures. Okay, so and they have become big influencers. I see that many kids nowadays they see all these movies and they are influenced by the film stars who are themselves semi-literate. You won't find any great engineers among the film stars. Most of them would probably have barely passed high school, and none of them would have been meritorious. And because of whatever reasons, they became big, whatever stars, and they have now become influencers. So these are bad influences, and the people who are actually employed in these, they have no ethics because they are driven purely by money. So because you are all joining an institute now, you should know who your enemies are. Okay, so this movie industries, they are your enemies. So it's best if you find you can use them for entertainment, but you should not be influenced by them at all. Because whatever they preach is actually nonsensical, most of them. Okay, and they are hypocritical. Then comes cricket. Okay, if you look at Sachin Tendulkar, so he was an icon of our time. In those days, what happened was we were starved for entertainment. Okay, and cricket provided us a good respite. Sachin Tendulkar was a great batsman. He was much different from what he was in his later years. In his earlier years, he was really in a different league altogether. It was a great entertainer. But the good thing about Sachin Tendulkar is he got success at a very young age. 17 years he joined the Indian cricket team. But if you see his statements or his conduct in public, he has always been a gentleman and he has always been very, very kind of ethical. You won't hear many controversies about him. Same for another person, Rahul Dravid, and even U.S. Lakshman. So there have been people who have been very, very ethical. But if you compare them with, say, the new guys who are mostly drunkards and womanizers, so there is a huge, huge contrast. Okay, so you have to decide what kind of people are going to influence you. If you want to follow some of these new guys, see how they play the cricket. That is okay, but don't let them influence your views on anything because they are incompetent to do anything beyond cricket. Most of them anyway don't pass class 12. Okay, and kind of guy who has not even passed high school giving lectures to college graduates on how they should what kind of value system they should have is actually ridiculous. Okay, so this is something which people don't talk about, but this is very, very essential because I see a lot of youngsters these days and elevating these cricket stars and movie stars to the level of gods. They are not gods. Okay, they are basically hypocrites, and you should not follow them at all. Okay, that is one thing. Then next come politics. So one issue, if you see the constitution, in fact the directive principles, let's look at fundamental duty. This is very important because we see a lot of students being influenced by politics. This has been going on for a long time, and this is not good for the individual. So let's go here. Fundamental duties. See, to safeguard public property and to abjure violence. So this is a fundamental duty of every individual. Okay, and if you see various agitations which are going on right since my childhood, I've been seeing those things, whether it was a mandal agitation or during the emergency or the flight movement, okay, or even the recent state movements, or last year there was some movement against some government, whatever acts, etc., amendments. Everywhere students are being used for political purposes. Okay, and this is not at all healthy for the society. So your fundamental duty safeguard public property and to abjure violence. So all these protests and all are fine if you believe in them, but only after you are competent enough to stand on your own feet. If you are an earning member, if you have your own job, if you are able to take care of yourself and your family, and then you want to kind of indulge in any of these activities, fine, you do that because you have every right to as an adult. But when you are a student, when you are still trying to figure out what exactly is your station in life, you should keep away from all these things because youngsters are typically used everywhere. If you look, say, the army doesn't recruit old people like me. Okay, army recruits only young people, right? And the reason is because it's easy to shape your mind at a young age. Okay, so at a young age, you should be more interested in being professionally qualified. Should have some kind of art which will earn you a livelihood. So if you are joining engineering, you should be good engineers, good mechanical engineer, good artificial intelligence or machine learning engineer, good electrical, communication engineer. Okay, so you should be good in that. Once you are good in that, once you have a good job, once you know that you can sustain yourself because of your skills that you have acquired, then you see what kind of how you want to influence the society and other things. Okay, until then, you should not get into this politics and all because ultimately politicians will just use you, student unions and all these things. They are really unhealthy for any student at your age. Okay, so please stay away from all these nonsensical things. That is my very, very sincere advice to you. Okay, follow the fundamental duty, preserve public property, always try to ensure that you keep your premises clean, influence people in a good way, try to teach those people who don't have a good education through outreach activities. So these are things which you should be doing. Okay, these are the fundamental duties which are there in the constitution and you are supposed to follow that. Okay, the news media. If you look at all these newspapers and all, most of the journalists, if you see them, they are mostly not from an engineering background. Okay. Now there is a clear-cut difference between engineering and between the so-called liberal arts. Right? And what is the difference? The difference is right from a young age. If you are learning mathematics, it's an analytical subject. Okay, you are supposed to analyze it. There is a clear answer of what is right and what is wrong. Okay, as you grow older and you study other subjects, maybe geography or not geography, maybe civics or history, etc., they are subject to certain interpretations. If you see the Constitution of India, here also, in principle, a lot of good things are there. In fact, I don't see any bad things at all, in principle. But then when you start exploring and interpreting some things differently, then whatever good is there, it may turn out to be bad for you also. So that happens. Now, to be able to make that kind of distinction, you have to be as old as me. Okay, I'm just saying it in a different way, but you have to be kind of old enough to understand the difference between right and wrong. And that comes only when you have proved yourself in your life, through your livelihood, when you have interacted with enough people, when you have engaged with various sectors, when you have tried to help other people and you face problems, at that time you are able to understand society better. Okay, so many of these so-called journalists, etc., mostly they are youngsters who have had a education, and nowadays arts education starts from 11th, 12th itself. You are too young to be able to distinguish anything or to understand the nuances between anything. Even now, when I'm talking about the constitution, I'm pretty sure it's not very easy for you to understand. Okay, but because I wanted a framework, at least some basic things I could kind of convey. So that is why I introduced it. But it takes time for youngsters to kind of understand many things. So stay away from news media. Okay. So if you are going to use say Twitter, use it to communicate with your friends. Don't use it for gathering news or other things. Okay, because mostly they are bad, and nowadays I see that mostly they are interested in this titillation and encouraging violence and all sorts of activism. Okay, so stay away from those things. They are not healthy for you. At a later age, maybe when you are 25 years of age, you can probably do these things. Or when you are engaging with the society in a professional capacity, then you can make your own opinion. Fine. But right now, I would say, please don't take any of these movies, cricket, politics, or news media seriously. Okay. Now, what remains is teachers and family. See, your teachers are still there. Okay, they will be looking after you for the next 4 years. It's very essential that you listen to them. Okay, because many other teachers, just like me at CBIT also, I'm pretty sure that many teachers who have loads of experience, okay, who have seen many things in life, who are actually guiding their own kids, and they are the ones who will look out for your best interest. So please listen to your teachers. Your family may have a reduced role now because many of you may be staying in hostels. And of course, you are going to spend a lot of time with your teachers, interacting with your friends, your peers and all. So it's essential that you listen to your teachers, to play a good role. And my request to the teachers is, please keep the students away from these bad influences. Okay, it's very, very essential that you keep them away from these bad influences, and that will happen only if you provide good influences. So which means that you should set up good labs, you should engage the students in such a way so that they are passionate about their subject. So this is my advice to teachers. Okay, I'm pretty sure you all know this. I'm just trying to emphasize, because in these days, with this advent of all smartphones and all, the probability of the students getting attracted to bad things in society are much more. Okay. Now, from personal experience, when I was a student at IIT Guwahati way back in 1995, what happened was, when we joined, there were some probably 2 or 3 people from Delhi who used to have this drinking habit. And when we graduated in 1999, hardly some 10 people were left who didn't drink. Okay. So, and all this happened because of peer pressure. You are roaming around with some friend who has some bad habits, you are kind of going around with that person. Okay. So, these are things which you should stay away from. So, all this drinking, smoking, etc. is unhealthy, and this is something that you should clearly stay away from. At one point of time, maybe 5 or 6 years earlier, I may not have kind of brought this even into discussion. But when I see all these movies nowadays, all Netflix, YouTube, etc., every movie promotes drinking. Okay, I don't know if these liquor companies give them money or whatever, but every single movie that I see, some fellow will be drinking, and the character would usually be a useless guy. I don't see good characters in any of the media anymore. Okay. So it is incumbent upon the teachers to ensure that children are kept away from these bad influences. Okay? And many of you are still young. 17, 18 is very young. So until you are 21, I think it is essential that teachers pay attention to these things also. In the old days, they would do. Somehow, at some point of time, a teacher was relegated to the background. The objective became only teaching the subject and nothing else. But I think it's time. Maybe I'm growing older, but I think it's time that we change that perspective. Okay. So that is very, very essential. So this is basically what I wanted to kind of convey. Okay, and I would request all students to please inculcate good habits in yourself and in your friends also. Don't fraternize with people who have like bad influences or something like that. Okay, and stay away from bad influences. That's very, very essential indeed. Okay, so I have said most of the things that I wanted to say. If there are any questions, maybe we can discuss.
If anybody is having any questions, please ask. We are just trying to see if the students have, yeah.
Hello,
please
sir.
carry
Good
on.
morning. Hello, sir. Good morning. This is Aman.
Yes.
I want to ask about state policy. You have told no. Is
Yes.
there any community to observe whether the states are following the state policy?
No, no, no. See, state directive principles are just guidelines for states to enact policies. Okay. Basically, providing access to various facilities. Now, what happens if you include, say, right to food, for example? Okay. So, what happens? Every state has to provide food, and then, ultimately, you are supposed to earn your food, right? Food should be provided to those who don't have. But what happens if you make it a right? Then everyone should have access. So everyone will be queuing in front of some ration shop and trying to get food or whatever, and that unnecessarily puts a burden.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So
Yes.
that's why I'm saying the morality is that everyone should have access to food. But then if you make it into law and make it an ethical issue, then you are in trouble. Because if you can't provide, then people will say state has not provided. And that is what has happened in various places. Okay. Because
Okay, sir.
now we have more rights-based system, and that is creating trouble. Yes.
Yes, another question, sir. Yes, another politician, a woman in Kashmir, Mehbooba Mufti. She said she is abiding the fundamental duty. Is there any inquiry can be taken about her?
So that the state will take care of. So in fact, you asked this question about Kashmir. So again, a nuanced thing. The Constitution of India was not applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. until last year. So only last year it was scrapped. Article 35A and Article 370, which provided special status to Jammu and Kashmir, was scrapped only last year. So many women didn't have rights. Many of the so-called scheduled caste or Dalits, they didn't have rights. So now they have as equal rights as the rest of the citizens of India. Okay. And for example, the freedom to travel within the country, it was restricted in Jammu and Kashmir. You couldn't travel just like that. Okay. So all these things are now kind of addressed.
Okay.
Yeah. So if anybody violates that, they are trying to do that. Okay, it's all political, and they also have some other sectarian issues. So government is kind of trying to do that.
Yes.
So I am hoping that things will improve there. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, sir.
There is one question, sir, from Lavanya Puttanuru. What do you think are the best ways to stop corruption, which is one of the biggest scam in India? And what do you think we can do to stop corruption?
You don't be corrupt. That's all that we can do. Okay. So I have faced this dilemma many times. And what I realized is if I am honest, I can teach a few students to be honest. If I stand in front of, say, 50 students in the class and say that I am honest, I don't do any wrong, you follow me, I think that is the best that I can do. Because trying to prevent others from stopping, say, corruption actually creates more trouble for the people who are actually trying to do good things. Because many of these laws which are enacted to prevent corruption are actually helping corruption. That's what I have observed as a government employee in the last 10 years.
One more question from Ashwathan KK.
Yes.
I took engineering to come out of social. Why is sir again teaching me civics? Why is sir teaching me civics?
See, you have to ask this to your teacher because they asked me to give this lecture. Honestly, I would have preferred a lecture on machine learning because I think that would be more useful to you in your to get a job or something. Okay, so I would request CBIT to invite me for a course on maybe ML 1 credit, some 15-hour course. I'll teach it for free. Okay.
Well, add to that, sir, civic sense and morals, ethics are part of each and every living being, yes. And certainly human beings, we have to be humane and also we should follow some morals and ethics. So I don't think this is not appropriate. So we have invited sir and sir is giving this lecture. Thank you, sir, for your response.
So, sir, to respond to this, I would like to give a rejoinder. Sir, what has happened in engineering education, I see this even at IIT, is that we have relegated teaching of ethics to a particular class of faculty. Okay, mostly those with the degrees in arts or literature or something like that, humanities basically. We have relegated morality and ethics to those faculty. Now, I don't think that I am less equipped to discuss this with students in my class, right? But somehow institutionally, this responsibility of teachers has been abdicated. So that is why I have to have separate courses on morality and ethics. Otherwise, I should be doing these things in my class as a mix of engineering, right? Why should I give it to some other faculty? So this is an institutional problem, and I hope somebody takes some steps to kind of address this. Very late in life, I have realized this. I am not trying to do this in my class. I have a very good mix of all these things along with engineering subjects.
Thank you, sir. And one more question. Sir, please give us UHV notes. UHV notes, Universal Human Values notes, is asking for the notes.
Read the Constitution. That is the biggest note. It has everything. The biggest problem I have seen is that people don't read documents nowadays. So everyone should read the original sources. Even news reporting is so bad. When I read the original documents, government reports, I mean, the fact is something else. Even court judgments, the original judgments are very good. But the way they are projected in media, etc., they are very bad. So I would simply say read the original documents yourself. So read the Constitution. It's a good start. A lot of nice things are there.
Yes, one more question, sir, from P. Lohit. Sir, some are filthy rich, but they have SC and ST caste reservation. Sir, according to you, is it based on caste reservation is correct?
See, when I was a student, because I come from whatever upper caste this thing, okay, so I had a different notion. It's mostly propagated by the community and other things. So what happens is, because we have a limited number of seats, so there is a big competition. Okay. As a result of this competition, what has happened is many seats are kind of going to a reserved category. Now, as a teacher, I see many students. In fact, many of my own students have been from the SC/ST community. Okay, many of them have been OBCs. Many times I don't even know until like some time when they come to sign forms or whatever. So what happens is they are from deprived places. Many of them are economically poor. So I think it is our responsibility to ensure that they come up there. The problem is then same opportunities are not given to meritorious students because of limited capacity. So that was my whole point. Because of this bad interpretation of the constitution, what the government has done is it has put a cap on the capacity. See, more college should come up. Okay, more government college should come up, more private college should come up. So that has not happened. Then obviously there will be a fight for all these seats and reservation business and all. There wouldn't be an issue if we had enough good colleges. So I'm hoping more good colleges like CBIT come up to kind of in the private sector to cater to more students. Then even SC/ST demands will be satisfied, the private communities will be satisfied, and even the other upper caste, unreserved category communities will also be satisfied. That is the only solution. Okay. So it's not either this or that, it's everyone.
Yes, sir. The schemes are introduced with an intention of developing the downtrodden people, and the creamy layer should come out themselves. But that is not happening. Probably that is the worry of the
See, it's
students.
government regulations, AICT. I mean, I have been through all these committees last few years. I mean, earlier, 5 years back, if you had asked me to give a talk like this, I would have said something else. But in 5 years, I have seen how government has systematically destroyed education in the name of God knows what. Okay, the constitution said some good things, and you are doing bad things and actually violating many constitutional guarantees given to citizens. So capacity has to be created. More institutions have to be created. Then all these problems will be solved.
Yes, sir. Bhanu Teja also similar question he asked. Then Ajita, he is asking, many government schools, colleges and other institutions lag behind in provision of required facilities. What are the ways through which this problem can be tackled?
See, government by the nature is a free service. Okay, because government schools are free. In fact, government gives uniforms and books. I have been to rural schools in Telangana, Medak district, and around 15 schools we went as part of a project. And everywhere I saw things were really bad. Okay, and they will be bad. There is no way that they can be good because nobody is interested in improving those things. The only way some improvement can come is basically if students who are studying at colleges like these actually start something and ensure that those colleges are benefited. It's not easy, but one start would be that you go to the nearest government college and try to have some classes there for the students. So some problems may be solved in the process.
Sir, another question from Nitin Kumar. Sir, shouldn't the amendments made during emergency deemed to be unconstitutional because the emergency is in itself undemocratic and unconstitutional?
So my lecture is fine. I think somebody has understood what I am trying to say. Morality and ethics. What is there is actually good. Nothing wrong with, see, the way secularism and socialism are interpreted are actually wrong. Secularism initially came because it was a clear-cut separation between the state and the this thing. It was an enabling feature because in those days, if you read the Magna Carta, which was enacted in the 11th, I think 12th century in UK, the king was trying to assert the powers of the church. Okay, and that's when the Magna Carta came, and then they said, no, you cannot do that. You have to give the people their due, so church can get their share, and the people who are working hard, the serfs and all, they should have their share. So the whole idea was equality, and here secularism is interpreted differently. So it is making things unequal. That is the problem. Second thing is socialism. Socialism, I mean, if you look at our philosophy, Danagunam has been there throughout our samskara. Okay, everywhere in our civilization, Danagunam has been there. So anybody who donates is considered to be good. So, but the socialism, which is a Western construct, has a different connotation. It means the government should provide everything. Okay, and that is wrong. It's not that the government should provide everything. The government should provide everything to those who don't have anything, not to everyone. If I am interested in starting a school for the benefit of people, why should the government try to regulate me? I am only trying to do good. So that is how this socialism business has been interpreted, which is leading to all these issues.
Thank you, sir. I think 2-3 questions are there, but about the reservations, which you have already answered in an elaborate way. So,
Yes.
by the way, I am Dr. Jagannath Rao, Professor in Civil Engineering Department and Joint Director, Student Affairs and Probation.
Nice.
Nice to hear the lecture, sir. Over to Dr. Nilima, please.
Thank you so much, Rao sir, for the question answer session. Now I would like to thank Professor GVV Sharma for such an informative session, starting from the Constitution of India and then connecting with the morals and ethics in education. I hope students have enjoyed, and it was a wonderful question answer session. Once again, thank you, sir, for joining us. It was really nice to have you here.
I'm happy that some questions came, because I was worried that it may be like a snakes lesson and people would be sleeping. So at least some people are awake, so that is good.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor Rao.
Okay, sir. Thank you all. I'll now exit the session. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Next session. There are a couple of announcements.
Yeah.
So, dear students, we have a session on 4th, and in which some of our students will be showing you some creative activities, maybe songs, dance performances, and other activities. So, we want to include the freshers also, first year students. So, there is a request from Chaitanya Geeti, the music club of CBIT, the songs. So if you are interested in participating in that, if you want to perform in that, there is an audition schedule on tomorrow 11:59 p.m. Tomorrow afternoon, in virtual mode, there will be auditions for selection of candidates for participating in the creative practices session. So all the first years will display, before the evening we'll display the link. Right now it's available with me. We'll upload this and give this link to you. And tomorrow, if you have any doubts, you can contact Mohit. The phone number and other things will display to you in the afternoon probably. Thank you all. Those who are interested in singing, especially in the creative practices session, they can give their names to Mohit, and tomorrow there will be auditions for the same to select the students to perform in creative practices session. Okay, thank you all. Over to Dr. Nilima. I think close the session.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. And please join us back at 2:30 for another session, interesting session on English literature. Yeah, see you all at 2:30. Yeah, thank you.